Hi, Tina Peters here.
See, today they go after you if you're investigating
Yeah.
sort of thing.
So, quick background on how I got involved in elections. So, I was a previous Democrat for a long time. Most of my life, I was actually a Democrat until I thought that the party had changed, uh, or I had changed. I couldn't figure out which it was, but I knew I just didn't align any longer. And I just thought the party had changed. I didn't realize why it had changed or what had changed it until now. Now it makes a lot more sense. But I changed parties, I think around 2012, 11, 12-ish. And I thought that would solve all my problems. And it didn't. I'm a policy guy. I'm not just this blind person that votes on party lines no matter what. I vote for the people and the policies that most closely align with what I feel in my mind and my heart. So my mother had encouraged me to get involved in elections. In fact, she'd been the first person to tell me to go vote when I was 18 years old. But then she said, get more involved. You need to go become a poll watcher or something like that. She was a poll watcher for a while. And after certain amount of nagging, which moms are very good at, and I'm very glad that she did that in a loving way, I went and called my county. I asked, how do I get involved with the elections? They sent me to the party that I was affiliated with. And I asked them, what do I need to do to get involved? And they said, you can be a poll watcher. And they walked me through the things that I need to do to become a poll watcher. And then I showed up on my first poll watching experience. And I was kind of shocked. I had never approached elections in a way where I was looking at things and determining how things work or if they're doing it right or anything like that. I'd never been a watcher. I had just been a participant. I walked in, I figured everyone there is professionals. They know exactly what they're doing. They've got a full handle on all this. I didn't really realize until I became a poll watcher that a lot of people that are running the show there are just told what to do, but they don't fully understand how the whole system works. And that's kind of scary because if you need to protect a system, you need to understand how the whole thing works because otherwise, bad actors that do understand how it works could potentially take advantage. And being in cybersecurity and forensics, that's how I've approached everything in my life is how could a bad actor take advantage of this situation? And what do I need to do to mitigate that from happening? How do I protect my client from a bad actor abusing the system? So I walked in as a poll watcher and I was kind of shocked to be told, you got to go sit down there at the other end of the room and here's a crossword puzzle and you can work on the crossword puzzle. And I asked, well, can't I get up and walk around and look? No, you can't. You have to stay in the opposite end of the room. There's two chairs, one for my Democrat counterpart. She was standing beside me and myself. And we both got crossword puzzles and we both were told to go sit on the other side of the room. And so we had to watch from 20, 30, 40 feet away. I mean, absolutely ridiculous. Her and I were looking at each other like, well, how are we poll watchers if we're not allowed to watch? So I couldn't do my crossword puzzle. I was too busy just kind of watching from a distance. She did her crossword puzzle, but that's what they want us to do. They don't want us to actually be watching. They don't want us to be involved. They want to keep the citizens as far away as possible. And of course, everyone asks, who is the they? The they is the election industrial complex, the cabal that a group of people that seem to want to remove and keep citizens as far away from the election system as they possibly can. And yes, I can name some of them. It's a large group now. It's growing larger and larger. It seems to be a whole complex of people. But the they is not as important as how are they doing it and what are they doing and how do we correct this situation. So I was asked shortly after the 2020 election to go out to DC to see if I could. Of course, I forgot to hit recording, so I just hit recording. We're good now. So when I put this recording up, it'll miss the first part of my talk. What I'll do is I will go back and edit that back in for the first few minutes. But anyway, I was asked to go out to DC. I took the opportunity to go out there, even though I did not want to, because I grew up in a little mountain town. I don't do big cities, and I certainly didn't want to be in the snake pit that was DC. But I also really wanted to know what was going on because as a citizen, I knew we'd been fed all kinds of stuff that just didn't seem to add up. And I didn't know who to trust, who not to trust. And I figured the only person I really trust is this one right here. And I trust these two things, these eyes and these ears. So I decided to go out there and figure out what was going on as to the best of my ability. So I went out. I was told to go and knock on a door at this particular hotel. It was the Westin Hotel in Arlington, Virginia. I went and knocked on that door, and I was greeted. I said, "Hey, my name's Mark Cook. I'm here to help any way I can. I am a computer guy. I run an IT company, do cybersecurity, I do forensics. What can I do to help you?" And they said, "Well, we don't have any computers here because Sydney, when she left, took all of them." And I said, "Well, Sydney Powell?" They said, "Yes, Sydney Powell." I said, "Well, why did she leave?" And it was turned out that she left due to a security threat of some type. I didn't know what it was. I didn't ask questions. I didn't feel it was my place to ask questions. But her and her team were gone, and they took all the computers and everything. So I was there, and there were a few other people that were there, but they didn't really have computers to work on to figure out what was going on. So I asked, "Well, how many people do we have? I can solve the lack of computer problem. Do we need computers? I can go get computers and set computers up." And remember, this is a week after the 2020 election. So we are in twilight zone time here. All hands on deck. I will do anything possible to get to the bottom of a potential stolen election. And it is our duty as American citizens to find any fraud prior to January 6th so we have a chance to investigate it and then take the necessary actions based on fraud that was found. And I watched the election like everyone else. I saw, one particular trend going this way the whole time. Then all of a sudden the vote count stopped in the middle of the night, and they stopped for a while. And then when they restarted, everything started going this way. That's not normal. That's not what a normal organic vote trend would be like. Just common sense. Over time, it finds, the average kind of finds itself and you end up with a horizontal line. That's how it should work. It's very weird for something to do this and then the counting stop and then the trajectory totally change after the counting restarts. That is not natural. I'm a math and computer science major. I know that's not natural. The numbers don't make sense. And then I started trying to figure out, okay, well, what happens when we vote? How does it go from a piece of paper, a ballot, to show up on the TV screen anyway? Because we're all watching the TV screen at night. How are these votes from the paper ballots showing up on a TV screen? I didn't understand the path, the workflow that took. And everyone I asked around me where I watched the election, which was in Miami, Florida, with American Priority Festival, no one there knew either. I thought, how as an American citizen do I not know what happens to our votes? What happens to my vote after I fill it out and drop it in a slot? How do I not know what happens from that point forward? I had just blindly trusted that the system works, but I've never questioned it up to that point. And obviously, something went wrong in that process because the counting would not have stopped all over the entire country at the same time. They tell us that these systems are totally decentralized and they're secure because they're all decentralized. Well, how does a decentralized system all stop at the same time? That doesn't sound too decentralized to me. So what I have found over time is that there are many aspects of this system that are in fact centralized, not decentralized. It's the appearance of decentralization, but it's actually a very centralized system, just with different names. So it's a centralized system that identifies as a decentralized system. And I'm sure in this whole trans era we are in, everyone understands that concept. Doesn't matter what reality is, it's just about it identifies as, apparently. I'm joking. So I'm there. I went and I bought a whole bunch of computers at a local computer store, about $16,000 worth. I came back. I set everything up over 2 or 3 days. I set up air gap systems. I set up laptops and desktops and servers and firewalls. And I didn't know what we were up against. I just figured, I was told there were spies and whatnot here. And I don't live in that world, that intelligence world. So I'm just a normal citizen. But people are telling me that there are agencies that are spying on us and lying to us. And I assumed, okay, well, these people know more than I do. And it turns out they were actually right. after I was there for a little bit, I realized I'm not leaving. I'm obviously stuck here for a while because now a lot of people, instead of teaching me how these systems work, they're asking me how they work. So I'm having to spend my time going to dig all this information up. I'm looking for operating system manuals. I'm looking for voting system manuals, election system manuals, election server manuals, every manual I could find, trying to figure out what systems are used in what states and what counties. How do the systems work? What are the mechanics of them? People are asking me, well, if they were manipulated, how were they manipulated? So I'm looking through and trying to diagram all the systems out to identify if there's manipulation in this point, then we might see this. But if there's manipulation over here, we might see this instead. So I'm diagramming all that out. I didn't know if it was having any effect, but I saw a picture later that was taken inside the White House. And in the very background of the picture, I saw one of my diagrams up on the wall. I could not believe that this guy from little IT guy from Colorado, some work I did a week or so before, suddenly is on the wall in the White House, up on the wall. That was pretty cool. And so that was in some energy for me to keep going. I knew that at least some of the fruits of my labor were getting through to people. And if I was helping others understand the mechanics of the system, then I knew I was making a difference. So I just kept going. I kept doing everything I could to make that difference. I ended up at some point, someone handed the Biden laptop to me, and I got to take a look at that data and forensically investigate it. And I realized when I looked at it, oh my gosh, these intelligence agencies have been lying to us. The people that claimed that they didn't have it for a year plus actually did. And it wasn't fake. It wasn't Russian disinfo. It was legitimate data. And so now our government agencies have been lying to us. What else are they lying to us about? How long have they been lying to us? Oh my gosh, the withholding of that actually did affect the election. So now I'm questioning absolutely everything. And I'm upset. I'm frustrated. I'm pissed off that our own government or parts of our own government are actually lying to the American people, lying to me. And I felt it was my duty to do everything I could to help expose that lie and help my fellow citizens understand what's actually going on here to the best of my ability. So I lived in that hotel for about a month and a half. On Christmas Eve, I flew home back to Colorado because everyone in the hotel had left. I was the only one there. I didn't know if anyone was going to come back. And so I had no need to stay there. So I flew back home, and I that night called and wished a few people Merry Christmas. One of them was Garrett Ziegler, who is the founder of Marco Polo, which is the organization behind the Biden laptop report. So they actually did that report. And I had met Garrett over the time that I was there for that month and a half. He had stopped by several times, and I made friends with him. And I wish him Merry Christmas. I wish his wife a Merry Christmas. And he told me that his wife had actually gone back home, back to Illinois, and she was 9 months pregnant. So I'm very glad, because DC was not a place for 9 months pregnant person. And I wished him Merry Christmas, and I asked him, does he need any company, or does he want any company? Because I knew what happened to Seth Rich, and I was worried that something similar could happen to Garrett. Who knows? And he actually said yes, he would like some company. So I said, all right, that's enough. That's all I need to know. I left my friend's house, went back to the airport, flew back to DC immediately. I never even made it home. So flew back there, Ubered to his house, did laundry because I was waiting to do laundry anyway. And I ended up moving in with Garrett. So I lived with Garrett from that point forward, I think up until January 19th. And almost every day I would take him to the White House, drop him off. I'd take his car and I'd go back to either his place or someplace around town. So for all this time period during the 2020 coup, I was actually living with Garrett Ziegler and trying to help him as best I could as well, as I navigated through all of this stuff. So it's been an absolutely wild ride for me as well. But I want to give you that background so you know who I was and how I got involved in all this, because that's a question a lot of people have. And it's a legitimate question, because there are a lot of strange things that have occurred in all this. You don't really know who's who or who to trust. So I'm along for the ride as well. So shortly thereafter, I went back home and I didn't know what to do. I wanted to help, though. And other people around the country realized that I knew something. So they started calling me from all around, word of mouth. And they asked me, will you come to this state or that state? And will you explain this to our election integrity groups? Can you explain what your understanding? Because everyone was at a loss for understanding this system. And you can't understand, or you can't fix a system that you can't understand. So you've got to understand the mechanics of it. So I went and I educated people, and I just wasn't seeing the movement that I felt that we needed as a country to be able to make the difference that we needed to have in the time period we had. So I got a call from someone in Texas, and they asked if I'd go down and present in Texas. I went down and presented in Texas and started to open some doors there. Then I heard about this Lindell Symposium, and they were going to go over the PCAPs, the packet captures that Mike had been told by someone existed, and that showed, it proved that our election was stolen by, some cyber attack. And I was very interested in that because turns out I know what packet captures are. And my concern was someone had lied to Mike Lindell about the existence of the packet captures, and then we're going to use Mike to distract the entire country. So we were over here looking at this when we should have been looking at this instead. And so I wanted to just look at those packet captures on behalf of Mike to make sure that they were actually legitimate before he just blindly trusted whoever it was that was feeding him this information. I begged and begged and begged to be a part of that, to look at it before it went out to the world. And I did get on that team. So I was invited onto the red team to examine the packet captures. I went to that first symposium and I was handed what I was told were packet captures. I examined them and they were not packet captures. And myself and other people also examined them, and they also confirmed they were not packet captures. So it wasn't just me. It was a group of us that said, these are not packet captures. We told Mike. And then if you notice, about that time, the talk about the packet captures kind of stopped. But then that next day, Tina Peters shows up. So Tina Peters, obviously, everyone there should know who Tina Peters is by now. She's the clerk from Mesa County, Colorado, that had some weirdness happen in her municipal election that was months after the 2020 general election. And it was such weirdness that the entire conservative city council in a very conservative area got completely wiped. And not only just wiped, but one of the liberal candidates that beat one of the conservative candidates, before Tina and her team had even put the ballots through the tabulation system, somehow they knew that they won, and they knew how many votes they won by. Tina hadn't even put the ballots through the tabulator yet, only some of them. So how on earth did these people know what the results were before she had even put them through the machine to tell her what the results were? And she was the only one that could pull the results. So she got very concerned at that point. And then, of course, the entire city council got wiped when they got all the rest of the results. They realized they were all replaced with liberal counterparts. One of them, whom just moved there 3 months prior. Tell me how you move to a city and 3 months later you get elected onto city council. I mean, you've got to be an incredible candidate to be able to do that with, barely even campaigning to get elected onto city council and beat out the incumbents that everyone liked. So all the citizens started calling Tina asking, what is going on here? And Tina said, don't worry, not a big deal. We'll figure it out. I've got all the ballots. We'll rescan them. If something went wrong, if there's a there, we'll find it. And I think that was her exact quote. So she's getting ready to do this. The Secretary of State of Colorado, Jena Griswold, and the voting system vendor Dominion are contacting Tina saying that they need to get in and do an update to the voting system. And it's really important that they get that update done. Now, it's odd timing because the election was over. So what is the big hurry to get an update done to the election system? Then Tina asked, well, what is this update you're going to do? They said it was just to remove the QR code feature off of the system so it doesn't read the QR codes on the ballots any longer. Now, which is strange because all her ballots had QR codes. So Tina was concerned that if they remove the feature off the system so it can't read QR codes, how on earth do I put these ballots back through the system to recount them to see if there's a there for my fellow citizens? So she tried to put them off. They insisted on doing it anyway. She was concerned that in this process that it might inhibit her from being able to retabulate that election. And she knew that her system had election records on it for the previous elections, including the 2020 election. And by law, she has to retain all election records for 25 months. There's a 22-month federal requirement and a 25-month in total for Colorado. So Colorado adds 3 months to the federal. And she tried to have her IT department in the county make a copy of the voting system so she could retain all those records just in case something went wrong or she needed to get that data again because of her requirement to keep those election records. And our county IT said, we can't do that because it's not our system. So she asked around and she found someone, Sharona Bishop, that said, hey, I know someone that can do that. This guy Gerald Wood is an IT guy and he lives here. He can do that for you. So she contacted Gerald Wood, also known as Jerry Wood. And Jerry said, yes, I can do that. So they got Jerry signed up, got an access badge for him, and he was going to go in and take that image. And apparently at the last minute, he said that he could not do that. So now the clock is ticking. The Secretary of State's going to show up. And so I think it was Sharona and or Dr. Frank reached out and they found someone, this guy named Conan Hayes. And Conan came in from out of state and he was able to take forensic images, what they were told. And Tina was told that Conan was this white hat hacker that had taken part in taking down this organization called Backpage about 20 years ago. That was part of this sex trafficking site, this improper behavior trafficking site. And so she very much trusted this person, Conan Hayes. And so Conan said, well, he would come in and do the work. So the badge that was, I guess, created for Jerry, they used for Conan to take the backup of the system. And they took the backup. Then the SOS came in with the voting system vendor Dominion, and they weren't there just to click a button to turn off a feature. They actually covered the windows up and kicked everyone out of the office. And they were there for 2 solid days. How does it take 2 days to turn off one little feature? So that was very suspicious of them. And likewise, Tina was very suspicious. So when they got done after 2 days and took the stuff off the windows and said, come on in, this is after the 2020 election, weird stuff happened in municipal. Then instead of just clicking a button, they're like in there for 2 solid days. And they were in the BIOS of the voting system. So it wasn't just like they were turning off a QR code feature. They were actually in the back end, the back door of the hardware of the voting system, which was very strange for them to be in. There'd be no reason to do that if they're just turning off a QR code feature. So after all this happens, they leave. She has another image taken because she wanted to see what they really did. She didn't believe they just turned off a feature. She was worried they were committing a crime. So she had another image taken. And then everyone left. So we found out about this at the Lindell Symposium. That's the first I'd heard about it. And the images were available to examine. So someone put them up on screen. I looked at them. I saw some concerning things about those images. And I told Tina, I said, and I met her there, which was great. I had never met her before in my life. I didn't know who she was prior to this day. And I just told Tina, hey, I would be honored to take a look at this for you, but I have to do it legally. I want to make sure all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. But if we can do this in a legal fashion, I would be honored to look at this data. And I will tell you honestly what I see. And if it's something that some bad actors that are very powerful don't want to hear, I'm not going to be intimidated by anyone. I will stand with you arm in arm and I will shout it from a rooftop if I need to. I'm not going to let people censor the truth. And so I told Tina I'd stand by her side. Here's my number. So a few months later, I got a call. It was from a legal team. And they said, would you be on the forensic team for this? And would you like to investigate the images? I said, I would be honored to do so on behalf of Tina and Colorado and every citizen in the United States of America to look inside this black box machine. So that brings me to the next, which is the 2 forensic reports that I worked on. And that was report 1 and report 2. They're my work. Doug Gould repeated that work as well. So we both did the same work. And then we both wrote the reports together. Now, his name is on the reports. My name is not. He has much better credentials than I do. I've just done this out of 40 years of experience without all the fancy credentials. But he's done it with all the fancy credentials. So it made more sense just to put his name on it. And he would be much better on the stand because he's got the fancy credentials. But it's not like I don't have the knowledge. I got plenty of knowledge because I've got real world experience doing this for all this time. So we worked together, wrote the reports. If you want to see those reports, they are on handcountroadshow.org under Get Educated, Colorado, Mesa County reports. I got all 3 reports there. Now, the first 2 were my and Doug Gould's work. Report 3 was done by Walter Doherty and Jeff O'Donnell. So report 1 very quickly showed that they wiped the whole voting systems. They repartitioned the drives, reformatted, put a whole new voting system on top of the old one, overwriting all of whatever evidence was left on those systems. That's the equivalent of going into a murder scene, a crime scene, with a rag and a bottle of Windex and wiping down all the fingerprints. That's essentially what report 1 shows they did. Report two, I wanted to see, is this system actually safe and secure? Is the system, following security standards that should be followed for something deemed nationwide critical infrastructure? And I looked at it, and within a few minutes, I was able to find a back door that allows someone to flip votes on this system without even being tracked. It didn't even trace, didn't log the votes being flipped. I didn't just find one back door. I found a second one, then I found a third one, and I found even more. This system was not set up with security as a paramount consideration. There is no way. In fact, the system, and I've got evidence to support it, plenty of it, was actually set up to make the system even less secure than it would be right out of the box. It was crazy. I couldn't believe this is what I was seeing. And there's no way a voting system vendor could do this on purpose, accidentally. They did it on purpose. They would have had to, because they could not be this incompetent. They know it's critical infrastructure. Yeah, they know it's supposed to be secure. They know, it's one of the most dangerous things in the world. So what excuse would they have leaving things wide open like they did on this system? I mean, I'm talking firewall ports were left wide open, database ports were left open. It was specifically set up not to trace and track certain things and log certain things. Very, very dangerous. It was set up in a way that people that don't know about cybersecurity could be convinced it's secure. But anyone that knows about cybersecurity would see in an instant it's all a big fat lie. The whole thing's built on a pyramid of lies, and that's what's so disgusting about it. So to bring some attention back to Tina Peters, because everyone seems to have forgotten about her, especially with all the J6 prisoners being released and everything else. I mean, Tina Peters, she's an American hero. She's a Gold Star mom. She was persecuted because of manipulated elections, and she was a clerk that stood up and stood out and exposed this, and she is being punished for doing so. And the judge in her sentencing even said that. The judge said he is sentencing her as a deterrent to all other election officials. I mean, that's ridiculous. This is why the verb Tina Petered got created. This is why when I travel around to different states and counties, I talk to election officials, clerks, elections administrators that are afraid to talk to me and afraid to go public because they don't want to be Tina Petered. Those are actual words election officials have told me. That's ridiculous. That's why I want to have a national, like a Tina Peters whistleblower protection program just for election officials. Any election official should never be scared to come forward if they detect malfeasance or if they're questioning what they're seeing inside the systems. There needs to be nationwide whistleblower protection specifically for our election officials. So to bring more attention back to Tina, I set up this spotlight event. This was the LetMyTinaGo.us event. It was about an 8 or 9 hour event where we brought all the people, or most of the people that were involved in the very beginning of all this, to come together and discuss and share their experiences so everyone could follow through and really know what had happened from day one going forward. And it's been frustrating because so many people think the wrong thing about what happened and who Tina is and what she did. So I wanted to bring everyone together so everyone knew the answers to that. And we also watched Selection Code together. It was a nationwide watch party. And that Selection Code is a documentary that features Tina Peters. And then we also watched Let My People Go. And that Let My People Go movie was done by Professor David Clements, who is the lower left-hand corner there on screen. Incredible film. It's a two-part. What it does is it describes all the components of the election ecosystem and how they're used together in order to manipulate our elections. And it also is a tribute to all of our J6 political prisoners that, again, are political prisoners because of manipulated elections. Manipulated elections are destroying our country. And that's why I am so passionate about returning our elections to the people. That's what's happened. Elections have been stolen from the people, subtly taken by all these different systems, these corporations that have created these solutions that then are sold to the election officials that think they're a good idea, but don't really understand what a bad person could do with them. And so basically we had the rug taken out from under us, and they slowly just took every part of our election system away from the citizens. Now, our election system is what chooses our representatives and all our laws. We cannot have a system that is not in the control of the people. Because if the system is in control of by the people that we use the system to choose, can you see the problem? There we go. All right, so to some cold hard reality. You cannot win a war if you don't know you're in one. You can't win a war if you don't know the goals of your enemy. You can't win a war if you don't know the tactics of your enemy. You can't win a war if you don't know the tools of your enemy. You can't win a war if you have no strategy. And you can't win a war if you use inferior weapons. So, my job, self appointed job, is to help educate my citizens. I don't want us to not win the war. I want us to win the war. I want freedom to be returned to the citizens of this country. The election illusion is right here. We won a battle. We did lose strategic positions nationwide, though. We won the presidential. That's great. We finally got a real citizen back into that position, not a corrupt elite politician. But we lost all the down ballots. And that was a strategic move on the election industrial complex's part. Their best move was to allow the Trump win, which they did not have to allow. They could have just stopped counting in the middle of the night, just like they did in 2020. And they could have, stuffed a bunch of ballots in, fed us fake results, and pulled the same stuff again. But if they did that again, people would have caught on. Too many people would have caught on. They would not have bought the illusion any longer. And if the people don't believe the illusion, then the people will get rid of the system. And they don't want to get rid of the system. They need that system intact in order to continue doing what they're doing to us, to be able to have complete dominion over us while creating the illusion that we have freedom and that we have free will. We don't really have that if we don't have a system that reflects our will. And that's the problem here. So we're being set up. The whole thing's a setup. Give Trump the win. Everyone will be happy. That'll be the distraction, and then take weeks to steal all the down ballots. That's why they prepped us before the election and said, well, don't expect results too quickly. It's going to take a while for us to tabulate these. They knew it going into it. Telling us that was to condition the public so they weren't surprised. And if they tell you that over and over again, you just expect it and you're not surprised. And if people aren't surprised, then they're more likely to believe the illusion. But that's what that was all about. That was conditioning the public so they can feed in all those extra ballots in the down ballots. And they figured they'll just steal the House and the Senate in 26. They'll steal as much as they can now. And they'll use the fact that Trump won to quiet down the entire election integrity movement. And that's why you're seeing all these other distractions right now. They don't want anyone focused on elections. They want people focused on everything else. They want people focused on a Tesla blowing up in front of Trump Tower. They want people focused on Teslas being burned and dealerships being abused. They want mass civil mayhem. They want illegals all over the place, creating all these distractions. I'm telling you, everyone, all of this we're looking at distractions so people don't fix the election system. Don't fall for the distractions. We need to keep our vehicle pointed right at elections, returning elections to the people, and we need to keep our foot on the pedal, the accelerator pedal. You got to do that. Ignore all the distractions on the side. That's what this is all going to be about. Mark my words, I have not been wrong one time yet since the beginning of all this. And so we don't even know what the results of our elections truly are, because the system is designed to make it impossible to know what the results are. So we can have all the audits in the world. We'll never know what the results are. And that's the name of the game. Just tie everyone up with cost and wasted time doing audits that they know will be fruitless most of the time. So we have to fix the entire system. It's really important. Election control. Who do elections belong to? Well, they belong to the people. They belong to us. Right here. Who is in charge of our elections is the question. Well, federal, state, individuals, and corporations. Certain individuals, not the public, not the citizens. Other people are in charge of our elections. We are supposed to be. So election control, there's a couple different types of controls they've got. They got financial controls. They got political manipulation, and there's technological manipulation. Tina Peters helped us see part of the technological manipulation. And at the very minimum, she helped us see how crazy these people are about allowing us to look inside those black boxes. When you dare look inside the black box, you get persecuted and thrown in jail and prison, 8.5-year prison sentence. So I'm going to focus on the technological manipulation. Our voter registration system, validation system, tabulation, and reporting. Those are the four main components of our election ecosystem. The whole thing works together. All these components work together. If you only look at one, you're not going to solve the problem, and you're not going to understand how all of them work together in order to allow manipulated results. And you don't need all of them. You just need to manipulate one of them, and it poisons all the rest of them. It doesn't matter which one. And if you manipulate more than one, you could do that too. And then we can't trust anything. So the voter registration system controls the number of ballots in circulation. It's just a database. It's a list of entries in a database. It's not a list of voters in a database. We're told it's voters, but we don't have any way to control that. It could be just a list of entries. It could be people that are made up, entries that are made up, fake addresses, fake people. We don't have control of it. Our election officials don't have control of it because that control has been taken from them by their states. And then a lot of the states have hired a third party to manage those systems. Or some of the states that claim to do it in-house don't actually do it in-house. So that's a problem. And then we have this voter validation system. That's like the signature verification or voter ID and whatnot. And we're told, well, don't worry about all these extra ballots in circulation. We have this wonderful validation system that ensures that only legitimate ballots get counted in our system. We make sure only eligible voters vote. Well, that's absolutely crazy because we know that system doesn't work either. We have evidence to support that system has failed in many different ways. So it's smoke and mirrors. It's a feel good. It's warm fuzzy. That's all it is. And the tabulation controls how the ballots get counted. When people are talking about the machines, that's what they're talking about is the machines, the tabulators. And then if you get results out of the machines and you look at the reports like our election officials do, well, they don't all add all those up themselves. They just hand it off to another entity that's not even the Secretary of State in many cases. And they think it is. And then they add them all up and then report them back to us and create these pretty little web pages on our Secretary of State site. We don't know the difference that they're not actually from our Secretary of State. Big problem. So let me take a look at the time here. All right. So we got a couple minutes before the fun little surprise we got for you. So little election math for you. Hope you have your calculators out. It's not complicated. Virtual voter registrations plus virtual votes equals virtual results. That is the problem. And that's what we've got. We've got virtual results now because we have a system that allows virtual voter registrations and allows virtual votes. When that mail-in ballot arrives, regardless of the information on the front, regardless of the signature, when you open and pull the envelope open and pull that ballot out, we don't know if an eligible voter filled the ballot out. We don't even know who filled the ballot out. It doesn't matter what's on the front. We don't know who actually filled that ballot out. And somehow we are told that it's perfectly safe to do that. It's absurd. No mail-in ballots should be counted as a result of that until we fix that system. So anyway, here's a little surprise we got coming. Tina Peters, we know, is in jail right now. She's on her way to state prison soon. And she still has a show. She's got a show on Untamed, and which used to be Conservative Daily. Now it's called Untamed. And that's Joe Altman's creation. And we're trying to keep her show alive because she can't do her show anymore. So once in a while, different people get asked to host her show. And I was asked to host her show today. And I, of course, had this going on as well. And I thought, what a great opportunity. I will not only host the show, but I will make you all a part of that show. So we're going to bring this presentation into her show. So what's going on right now is probably the introduction to her show. And if you can see on screen, you might be able to see a studio right there. That's what studio is. So that's actually the production studio that does Tina's show. And they're going to jump on here in a second, probably in our ears, and let us know that we're ready to go. And they're actually going to broadcast this nationwide. So if any of you've got questions, we'll bring you up on the screen, and this will be a nationwide deal when this show goes out. So, all right, there we go. We're here. So I'm gonna jump way back for everyone here. And so anyway, everyone that's watching Tina's show right now, let me introduce myself. My name is Mark Cook, and I very much appreciate being able to host the show for Tina here. I've got a surprise here. So I'm actually in the middle of a presentation for Muskingum County, Ohio. The Zanesville Patriots have invited me into their facility. A few of them are on remotely with us as well. And for the past hour, I've been bringing them up to speed. I've gone through the Tina Peters story and what brought me to where I'm at right now. And this is such an important presentation. I do this presentation all over the country, but I wanted to take this as an opportunity, since everyone watching Tina's show definitely knows who Tina Peters is and what she's been through. I wanted to bring the next phase is, how do we fix this? What do we need to do to get out of this system? And how are they at, what have we learned thanks to Tina? So that's what I'm going to bring up right now. So I'm going to jump right into the psychological contrast that we have here that a lot of people are missing out. And I think that's why we haven't really got to the bottom of this yet, because we're not approaching it right. So we have got two groups of people. We have group A, the citizens, that's all of us. And we think that elections are a tool to measure our will and determine who we want to represent us and what laws we want to follow. That makes sense. That's what I feel elections are. That's what most everyone I talk to feel elections are supposed to be. However, there's another group, and those are the criminals. And criminals believe corrupt elections are a tool to obtain and maintain power, launder money, control the laws that we are expected to follow, in a covert way without the citizens figuring it out. That's their little secret. They put on a magic show, the election magic show for us. And we go through and think we're voting and think we're counting our votes and all this stuff. But they actually absolutely have ways to manipulate the results of those elections. So I've been showing this slide for quite a while. And then I realized, I started paying attention to these people and what they're doing and the patterns. And I realized, well, we got something a little bit different going on here. I had to adjust my slide. So group B is not just criminals. We have a communist faction that is destined to try to destroy our country. They are determined to destroy our country. That's who we're really up against. Now, we've got some criminals that are just enjoying being criminals, but at the top of all this, we have communists that are using the criminals and using our election ecosystem in order to destroy our country, United States of America. That's cold hard reality. So corrupt elections are the communist sleight of hand. That's what we've all got to realize. Corrupt elections are the communist sleight of hand. That's what we are seeing here. So an honest election, citizens cast their votes, collect the ballots, we tabulate the ballots there to get the totals, and then we get our results when we add them all up. Real simple. That's how an election is supposed to work. First order election manipulation. I'm actually going to walk through how elections are manipulated so you understand what to look for. And this is first order simple stuff. Candidate lies about their opponent and then allows everyone to vote. And then we collect the ballots, tabulate them, and get the results. Obviously, if certain people lie about their opponents, it's going to affect the way people vote. We know this is happening. This happens day in and day out. It's constant lies now. But even since the beginning of elections, of course, someone figured out if we just lie about my opponent, I can sway people's voting. That's first order election manipulation. Let's go to second order manipulation. If between collecting the ballots and tabulating the ballots, what if we spread that out a little bit? And in between there, we took the ballots off to the side and we counted the totals to determine what the result was. And if we knew that we wanted, let's say, Mary to win this election, and Mary's running against Bob, and Mary is down by 20 votes. If we knew she was down by 20 votes, what could we do? Well, we could fill in some undervotes. Like those are where someone doesn't fill in any vote. Like they don't know if they want to vote for Bob or Mary, so they just leave it blank. Well, if a bad actor got their hands on those ballots and they just filled in votes for Mary, that's a free vote for Mary. They could do that. Or they could throw some Mary ballots out. Or some Bob ballots out, sorry. Or they could stuff some Mary ballots in. So they could mess with the ballots before they actually get tabulated for real and affect the election that way. That's second order election manipulation. That's been done for decades also. In fact, that was being done at the precincts a long time ago. And that was some of the argument to move to these computerized systems to stop manipulation at the precincts. But instead of fixing that problem, we've actually created a bunch more problems. So we were sold a bag of lies. And we had good intentions. We wanted to fix fix it so that people weren't committing fraud. But unfortunately, we picked the wrong way to fix it because it actually made fraud easier to commit in every possible way. In fact, in Carbon County, Montana, the clerk Crystal was actually caught shredding ballots in the middle of the night before running them through the tabulator, and she was running for re-election. And I mean, I'm sure you're shocked, but she won her election. Well, it's really easy to do when you're the one counting the ballots and you're the only one there, and you're shredding ballots and then tabulating the rest of them in the tabulator. And that's been going on. That happened. That happened in 2022, in fact, with electronic voting systems there. So electronic voting systems didn't stop that from happening. It just made it so the citizens now can't see it, because she was able to do it the middle of the night when the citizens were not involved anymore. So just pushing the citizens out of the system is the problem. All right, so let's go to a little supercharged second order manipulation. What if there was a candidate that was very unpopular and you're going to manipulate the election in their favor? The citizens may not buy that at the end if the candidate was very unpopular. They may say, wait a minute, there's no way this person could have won. So the best way to manipulate that type of system is to get control of the media. And if you get control of the media and you use the media to convince the citizens that this person is actually very good candidate, then you might be able to fool them. And I think that may have happened in this last election. Do you remember a particular candidate was not popular at all? Like, couldn't even get a vote in the primary. And then all of a sudden, the last minute was put in to run. And going in, they weren't popular at all. And then all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, she was extremely popular, or at least we were told she was extremely popular. And we were told it was a 50-50. It was just neck and neck race. How do you go from zero popularity to a neck and neck race in 2 weeks? Well, you don't. But that was to condition the public to accept the results of the election. Now, they were really planning on winning, but I think at the last minute they realized, well, we can't. Let's go to that strategy of just allowing the Trump win, and then we'll just make his life a living heck, and we'll attack him for 4 years straight. We'll just steal all the down ballots we can, so we have the best opportunity at neutering the Trump administration. That was the plan. God did step in, and a lot of great patriots stepped in. We reduced the amount of fraud as much as we could, luckily, and enough people voted in person on election day that they were just not able to stop some really good candidates. So luckily, we have our foot in the door with the presidential, and luckily, and we were very lucky to maintain or gain control of the House and the Senate. That almost did not happen, and it was because of a lot of people that weren't doing the right things they were supposed to do. All those people that told you to vote early did not help you. Those people that told you to vote early almost ruined the election, actually. And I really hope the people that pushed the whole vote early thing will pay attention and listen and understand this. But unfortunately, I've tried to have that conversation with at least one of them, Scott Pressler, who a lot of people love. But I had the conversation in person with him at a church in Arizona way before the election, about a year before the election. And I was told right to my face, he said, Mark, I have been told the same thing by all the election experts, even Professor Clemens, and I don't care. I'm not going to stop. That's what he told me, flat out. Wouldn't even have the conversation. That's crazy. I don't care what someone has to say. I'm willing to listen to them and consider what they have to say, along with my knowledge, to make sure I'm not wrong about anything. He wouldn't even have the conversation and shut me off and shut me down and walked out the door. So take it for what it is, but there's more to that. All right, so let's go to third order election manipulation. Here's what's really going on right now. It's been supercharged. Imagine this. Imagine you have the mainstream media, the FBI, DHS, CIA, and CISA, and other agencies at your fingertips. And you use those agencies to create propaganda about the elections being safe and secure, the safest, most secure. And all these protections are in place, and no election could ever be manipulated. Like they jam that down our throats constantly. Imagine you have that propaganda tool. And of course, a lot of people are just going to believe those agencies, because you have to be, an election denier. Let me go back here. Well, I really messed that up. Sorry about that. Let me, it happens when you get a little excited with the keyboard here. So we'll go to back to staging here. So yeah, imagine you have this control. The people that just don't know any better are going to start believing these agencies. And they're going to call everyone else an election denier. In fact, they'll even use the media to set up this term, election denier, and they'll make up this disease called election denialism. I mean, isn't that amazing? These people, they really think that we buy this stuff, but some people do. So they've made it all up. Then they create this logic and accuracy test to create a false sense of security for election officials and the public. They tell us, if the logic and accuracy test comes out correct, then everything else is fine. Well, here's what it is. In most cases, the vendors of the software create the procedures for the testing of their own equipment. So, right, they're testing themselves essentially. And then they tell the election officials, follow these steps. And if you get this answer, then your system is good. That's not how you test systems. Use third-party verification. You don't use the very system to test the system. You use an external system to test another system, but they don't do that. So they want to have control over that logic and an accuracy test. They even call it an accuracy test, right? It's smoke and mirrors. And all it does is it proves that the systems under certain controlled circumstances can work correctly, but they don't prove that under every other circumstance they can work correctly. Believe me, the voting systems can be programmed to know whether they're doing a test or whether they're in a real election. That's very simple for a bad actor to do that with. And then they subtly raise margins of human error. They conduct manipulated elections. They design a risk limiting audit to minimize error detection. And if you don't know what a risk limiting audit is, here's what a risk limiting audit is. It's more smoke and mirrors. They try to tell us, well, we're just going to check this number of ballots, a few precincts, a few races, and small percentage. And if that small percentage is right, we're going to assume the rest of it is right. And then they try to tell us that's a risk limiting audit. And peasants, that's what they think we are. Peasants, it's so great. You should be so happy that we gave you this risk limiting audit. It's good. We trust us. It's good. That's what they tell us. But here's the equivalent of that. Let's say you had a grocery store. You're the manager of a grocery store and you got 10 cash registers. At the end of the day, you want to make sure none of your cashiers took any money from the register or miscounted something, right? Made a mistake. Can you imagine this? Can you imagine saying, well, I'm just going to check a couple cash registers. And if those cash registers have the right amount of money in them, I'm going to assume the rest of them do too. And you tried to convince the owner that that's a good idea. What do you think the owner is going to tell you? Owner's probably going to give you that, right? Of course, I would. That's not a risk limiting audit. That's a risk enhancing audit. That enhances the risk by only checking this much and then just blindly assuming the rest of it's right. But they try to convince us it's good. It's, the risk limiting audit is actually a risk enhancing audit identifying as a risk limiting audit. These are called trans audits. Again. So they condition the gullible to trust the RLA. They explain any mistakes we do find, they explain them away as isolated human error. And a lot of people might believe it's isolated error when they only look in one county and they only see it in one place. But when we, the people, the citizens, start talking and sharing what's going on county by county and state by state, it's funny how these isolated human error events seem to keep happening. It's almost like there's a pattern of the same type of isolated errors. They aren't so isolated when there's a widespread pattern, but that's what they didn't want us to be able to detect. And that's why they censored us and tried to break us from all these platforms and break our ability to communicate with each other. That's why they've tried to divide all of us by race and gender and sexual preference and religion and you name it. They've tried to divide us because you can, that's the concept, divide and conquer. That's what they've been doing. And if we're angry at each other, then we're not going to listen to each other. What we need to do is stop allowing this manufactured division to continue to be perpetuated. And we need to start uniting with our fellow citizens, regardless of how we feel about policies. But we need to unite for the common goal of fair elections that accurately represent our will, even if our will is different. The whole point of it, it's a tool to measure our collective will. And that tool must function for us to have true freedom. Then they claim any mistakes we do find and catch them at, they make sure that those mistakes are underneath the margin of victory or loss. And if they're below the margin of victory or loss, then they tell us, little peasants, well, yeah, we agree that, yeah, there were some mistakes there, but It was under the margin of victory, so it's not a big deal. But here's the problem. If you keep it under the margin of victory or margin of loss of an election, and you do that here, and you do it here, and you do it here, when you add all those margins up, you start realizing that you can affect a large county or you can affect a state's elections. That's the problem. They've engineered the manipulation in our elections to keep it below the margin so it can't be detected. That's what they're trying to do. And every year they get better and better at it. As the computer systems get better and better, they get better and better. And that's why all these constant updates for our voting systems. I mean, if the things just count dots, why do we need to update them every election or multiple times a year? It's ridiculous, right? That's why they're doing it. Those are the updates. It's to make it harder to find the fraud. So then, of course, they tell us to expect delays in the results. Of course, right? They fed us that for this last election too. And they threaten anyone that threatens their Dear certification, just like Jocelyn Benson, the SOS of Michigan did, and like Jenna Griswold, the SOS of Colorado did. They play these games. Now think about it. To certify an election. To certify means to certify something as true and accurate. They are telling people that they must certify it as true and accurate, even if they have reason to believe that it's not. They're basically forcing citizens to commit fraud. I think they should be held accountable for doing that. Then they threaten anyone that threatens certification. They attack anyone that questions the election, tells us that we're suffering from election denialism, which is a horrible, debilitating disease, isn't it? And then they tell everyone else there's no fraud. Remember, after 2020, they said there was no fraud in the election. Then when we found fraud, they said, well, there's no widespread fraud. Then when we found widespread fraud, it changed again to there's no widespread fraud enough to change the results of the election. And then when we found widespread fraud enough to change the results of the election, it changed to you're all suffering from election denialism. Yeah. So here's how they're doing it. They create headroom between the real votes and the number of registered voters. That headroom right there is room where you can stuff in more ballots to affect the real votes. And so the more room you have there, the better if you're a bad actor. When you have a whole bunch of people voting, though, what happens is that floor gets raised. And when the floor gets raised, it squeezes the number of available headroom. So if you don't have much headroom there, then they have to end up in a situation where you end up with voter participation that is incredibly high because they're stuffing in these ballots here. So if they stuff in these ballots, all of a sudden you've got 80, 90% voter participation. In some cases, you have 100% voter participation, and several actually around the country, you end up with over 100% voter participation. Now, even us lonely, stupid little peasants realize that you can't have more votes than you have voters. You can't have more than 100% voter participation. So they try not to make it so obvious to the peasants. So they try to raise the number of registered voters as much as possible to create headroom so they can keep manipulating within this amount. Now, they can't have more registered voters than you have population, though, right? Because the peasants also might catch on to that. If you have 1,000 registered voters, but you only have 800 people that live in that county, we might catch on that you have over 100% registered voters. How do you have that? Well, we have that all over the country as well. So their real goal is to increase the census as much as possible, increase the population as much as possible to create headroom to then increase the registered voters as much as possible to create headroom to manipulate the elections. That is the name of the game. And they do that by inflating the census numbers. Do you remember that question on the census that was removed about 13, 14 years ago? You remember that? It was, are you a legal US citizen? And I could not, for the life of me, figure out why on earth would these people want to remove that question. What do we want illegals registering in our census? That's absurd. We use our census to determine all kinds of important things for US citizens. We don't care about illegals being in those measurements. And I realize now they did not remove the question for illegals to fill out the census. There was not a line of illegals, knocking on the door saying, hey, we'd like to fill out the census, please. They didn't do it for the illegals. What they did it for was to take a system that we could verify against real citizens, because we do have social security numbers and whatnot that we could correlate that information. They created a system that broke that correlation. If they take the question off, then the records in the census could also include illegals, but they're not verifiable. What are we going to do? Find a record in there and then go find the illegal? Even if it is an illegal, you're never going to find that illegal just to verify the legitimacy of that record. So they have created a pathway in our census in order to inflate the census with unverifiable records. That's the name of the game. And then, of course, they've taken voter registration, away from the counties. Now someone else manages it. Either the state manages it, or they hire some third party company that manages it, or they buy this software that's white labeled software that the state actually doesn't create themselves, but they just label it, with their own name. Or sometimes some states may create their own. But the problem is the management has been taken away from the counties, the county officials, our county officials. That's been stolen from them. And so then, of course, they include the DMV, which is yet another excuse to be able to create these extra voter registration records, and then just blame, oh, they accidentally clicked the box. It's not our fault. It says right there it's illegal, so they've committed a crime now. But I don't think we have a whole bunch of illegals actually trying to register to vote. They've created a system that allows voter registrations to be activated, and they can just claim it came through DMV. It's ridiculous. Then, of course, we're registering underage voters. Why on earth would we register underage voters? Well, here's why they do it. They're not supposed to be able to vote in the elections, but when they register underage voters, isn't it funny how all these mistakes get made? Like people send out ballots to underage voters by accident, or send out voter registration cards to underage. I mean, this is the kind of things that's happening. That even happened in Utah. They sent out ballots to underage voters by accident, right? It's insane that thing could happen. I mean, who would have ever thought? Possibility. If you don't register underagers, then you kind of eliminate that possibility. Just, if you want to use your noggin there. But that's the name of the game. Register as many people as possible. And then for the underagers, when they turn 18, guess what? They don't wait for that underager to go in when they're 18 and activate their record. Guess what happens? You're going to be shocked. The record gets automatically activated in a lot of cases. How convenient. Extra registered activated voter right there. And people that don't actually vote, like if you're registered and you don't vote, your voter registration record is viable to someone that wants to manipulate the elections. They're not going to use yours first. They're going to use the fake ones first, because if you use the fake ones, no one's going to say, hey, you used my voter registration record. But if they really need to use them, if you're not voting, they're going to use your record. How do we know that's happening? Well, people all over the country were going to vote and being told they already voted. Now, isn't that funny? Is your memory so bad that you don't remember voting? Give me a break. That's why we're seeing that. People are using those voter registration records to stuff votes into the system. So, and then, of course, if you find a record that shouldn't be there, they make it impossible to get it out of there. They say, well, this individual has to not vote for 2 years in a row. I mean, literally, you could probably register your dog to vote and then go in there, bring Fido with you and say, Fido accidentally registered to vote. Can we remove the record? And you'd probably be told with a straight face, well, Fido has to not vote for 2 elections before we're allowed to remove the record. I mean, this is how brain dead these people are in a lot of cases, because they're just stripped of the ability to think. So creating that headroom is really important. Now, here's how they do the rest of it. It's called the feedback loop. It is brilliant what they have created here. So imagine this. Citizens cast their votes, and then you monitor who votes. Now, why would you monitor who votes? Why would that be important? Well, picture this. If I know what your party affiliation is, I probably know what your ballot's going to look like when you fill it out. How divisive everything is. I know what a Democrat is going to fill out. I know what a Republican is going to fill out. And even if someone's not affiliated, there's still a profile on you. Do you know that all the parties have this information? There's a profile on every single voter in this country. There is massive amounts of data on every voter. And there is a database, multiple databases that know how heavy a Republican or how heavy a Democrat you are, how heavy you lean one way or another, or where you are on certain issues. Can you imagine big tech has access to all your emails, all your tweets, all your purchase records, your purchase history from Amazon and Best Buy, all that stuff, everything you buy at the store, how many times you fill your tank up, what kind of car you drive, all that data is known about you. If you knew how much data was actually in databases about you, every single American citizen, you probably wouldn't sleep at night. They know everything about you, even the stuff you don't think anyone knows. They know. Imagine they had all that information, which they do. And imagine they just knew you voted. Do they need to look at your ballot to have a really good estimation of what your ballot looks like? No, they do not. This is the brilliance in what they have set up. They have a system that does not require them to even look at the ballots anymore to determine what the votes are. They can build a model of the election results off on the side. They just need to know if you voted so they can use your voting profile to fill out that model that they are building on the side. And they're doing that. Now, how do they know you voted? Well, you vote by mail. They know that because of the mail-in ballot tracking system that they have created. By the way, your tax dollars paid for it. And they gave it to you and they told you, we're going to give you this mail-in ballot tracking system so you can feel comfortable voting by mail, little peasants. Don't worry about your mail-in ballot. You can just look on your little screen that you're used to, you stare at all day long anyway, and you just put your information in and it will give you a warm fuzzy and tell you where your ballot is. They did not make it for you. They made it for them to have an excuse to gather this data. That way, if they get caught gathering the data, they can say, hey, it's for ballot tracks. These people are extremely intelligent, and they're taking advantage of good people that don't quite understand the sophistication of this manipulation. So some people say, well, I don't vote it by mail. I vote only in person. So they wouldn't know that. But when you go in to vote in person, right? What do you check in on? Electronic poll book. So they know instantly that you checked in to vote, and they know where you're voting. They know what your precinct is. They've got all the data. They're watching so much data is being collected during an election. It would blow your mind. They have data feeds coming in from everywhere, and they're using all that information in order to know how many votes to stuff in. Feed their result manual, calculate the votes they need to shift, and then feed the phantom votes in via USPS or the drop boxes. That is the name of the game for their big manipulation with the feedback loop. That's why they needed COVID. That's why they used COVID to push mail-in voting everywhere, to get the drop boxes put in. They needed a way to get unsolicited and uncheckable, unverifiable ballots into the system. And remember, when that mail-in or absentee ballot shows up, no matter what is on the front of it, no matter what the signature shows, we still have no way to know if an eligible voter filled that ballot out, because we don't know who actually filled the ballot out and put it in the envelope in the first place, regardless of the information on the front. That's the name of the game. That's why COVID, that's why the drop boxes, that's why the huge push for mail-in ballots all over the place. That's why we have the absentee overseas ballots, the huge push for that too. Those systems are used to manipulate the elections. The one thing they hate are in-person voters, because they really can't manipulate the in-person voters. It's kind of hard to fake a person. So they need this entire virtual way to get ballots into the system in order to manipulate our elections. That's their game. So when they do this, it's really hard to detect it. You can't even see it at the counties. And that's why it's such a beautiful system, because our county officials say, hey, everything is fine here. They don't know that the ballots coming in are already manipulated. They would have no way to know. And they don't have a method to stop it from happening, because the law prohibits them from doing so. They're forced to count all those ballots. The law allows it. So we need a lot of legislative change also to fix this, to close these loopholes. That is what they're doing with the system here. So, of course, they also add the media psychological conditioning. They tell us all there's record voter participation. They've got to condition us with that, because we're going to see a whole bunch of extra ballots show up in the mail. They've got to prepare us for that, because otherwise we'd be surprised. So they tell us record participation every year, and they gradually increase it. But they have this system so well engineered. It is beautiful. They have total dominion over our elections, actually. That'd be a great name for a voting system company. They should name one like Dominion. They do that because they resent us, and they're mocking us, by the way, if you didn't realize that yet. They know what they're doing. They think we're all too stupid to figure it out. So then if you feed the phantom ballots in, they collect the ballots, tabulate them, and get the results. Everything is hunky-dory at the county. They don't realize it. They just got played. That's the problem. They've created an infrastructure that can manipulate the elections before it even gets to the counties. It's beautiful, isn't it? So, what if they still can't get it done in time? Well, can you imagine having to do that all in one day? Be a lot of work to do in one day. And they realized they couldn't get it done in one day. They knew they needed more time to get that done, to do all those calculations across the whole country. So they came up with this idea: early voting. And they sold it to the peasants by saying, hey, peasants, you're too busy to go vote. So we're going to give you more days to vote. It's for your convenience. It's for your safety. 6 feet for your safety. So it's 2 weeks for your safety, 4 weeks for your safety, for your convenience. That's their game. Now, the problem with that, though, is citizens, we are procrastinators. We all know this. And we weren't voting early. We were waiting to the last minute anyway. They had to come up with a way to convince the citizens to stop procrastinating and vote early. They need that information as early as possible so they can feed their models in order to manipulate the election and spread that manipulation out over weeks so we don't detect it. Because if they just stuffed a whole bunch in one day, we kind of figured that one out. The peasants are kind of stupid sometimes, but once in a while, if it's really obvious, the peasants figure it out. So they came up with what? Bank your vote. Oh, I know people are going to say, but Mark, that the RNC came up with that. Well, I hate to tell you, everyone, but we are being played by globalist political elite that have infiltrated both parties, Democrat Party and the Republican Party. They just went after the Democrat Party first, but there are infiltrators in the Republican Party as well. If there weren't, we would have had this fixed already. So there are people that are, puppets and puppeteers that are pushing this whole early voting, bank your vote scheme. And that is to push everyone to vote as early as possible so they have the data that they need to effectuate the election. You don't get any more voting credit if you vote the first day of early voting than if you vote on election day. But early votes are worth much more to people that want to manipulate your election. But real votes in person on election day are worth much more to you because people can't manipulate the election as much. So when you vote in person on election day, you actually protect your vote much better. Now, a lot of people do vote on election day, and they can't stand the people that vote on election day. They resent us. So they still have to manipulate the election after the election day voters. How do they do that? Well, they came up with this whole BS. Well, we have to let mail-in ballots keep arriving after election day because, the mail is so slow and we don't want to disenfranchise any voters. Well, all those ballots that come in after election day, that's so they can fix the election day vote. That's what they're doing. So it doesn't mean just, what does it matter? Vote whenever. Why don't we just not make it easy for them? Let's make it as difficult as possible. Let's vote on election day in person in huge numbers, so much so that it would be so obvious they're throwing in all those extra ballots after that we catch them at it, which we kind of are doing anyway. But if they do all that and they still can't get the totals they want, what do? Well, they've got their little override system. And their little override is, well, stop counting in the middle of the night and just feed in the results that they want us to believe. And then when we're demanding all these audits, just hold us off until they can backfill all the ballots. That's what they did in Maricopa. That's why in Maricopa County, when they opened up all those boxes, they had already been opened prior. That's why they saw those patterns of ballots. That's why we saw like 10 Bidens, 1 Trump, 10 Bidens, 1 Trump. I don't know if it was actually 10, but it was somewhere around there. They saw those patterns. The citizens that were looking at these ballots when they're taking them out, they saw all that. They'd already been gone through. I heard in one of the boxes, someone had defecated in it. They resent us. They don't want us looking. They are pissed that we're actually paying attention to elections now because their little illusion is coming to an end because the American citizens are starting to realize it was an illusion system they built. So after they do that, then of course they just publish those results. They shuffle in voter registration records because they got full dominion over those. They backfill the results and they publish what they want us to believe. And then, of course, everything matches up by the time we actually get our hands on those ballots because they've already fixed to make sure they stuffed them all in there. And they usually stuff a few extra just to, punish us. So they say, well, had you not asked for the audit, you wouldn't have realized you did even worse. That's on purpose because they resent us. So the seal and the cleanup is this. They have the media psychological conditioning. They tell us results are going to be delayed. There's going to be mistakes. They even told us that there are going to be mistakes in the election, right? Because they like to explain the acts of man as, mistakes and acts of God. They withhold and destroy the data we need to audit the election. They use the risk limiting audit to actually minimize the error detection. They condition the gullible to trust the RLA. They explain mistakes as isolated human error. They ensure the mistakes are within the margin of loss. They rush and threaten to force certification. And then, of course, they activate these wonderful agencies that really probably were good at one point and probably do have good people still working there, but they've got bad people working there that are actually using those agencies as propaganda tools. And that's the mainstream media, FBI, DHS, CIA, CISA, et cetera. Now, hopefully, our agencies are getting cleaned out right now because they do need a big cleaning. And I want the good guys to be running those agencies, not the bad ones. And then, of course, they tell us there's no widespread election fraud. They mock and attack all of us people suffering from election denialism. And, of course, that's a made up term. And then the fourth order manipulation is where we are already in, that a lot of you may not realize it, using artificial intelligence in order to supercharge all of the above, including the political manipulation and all the deception games to create this mass psychosis in our society, just shoving constant deception at people nonstop. It's actually incredibly psychologically damaging as well. And I hope every single person, now let me fix hope. I will make sure to my last breath that every single person responsible for committing these atrocities upon the American people are held fully accountable for all of their actions. And I'll enjoy every second of it. So I've been keeping track of all these cabal tactics that I've seen around the country for the past 4 or 5 years. So I wanted to put together a list of them and share them with you. So I had to shrink this down to like 4.5 point font. So here they are, but don't worry. Do you get them all? Okay. It's not just all of them though, because that's only page 1. There's actually another page to it. There's page 2, and there's a page 3 coming as well. So I am happy to share this with anyone who asks. Just contact me. And my contact information is on one of the earlier slides. And I'll make sure that this presentation is also put on handcountroadshow.org, and you'll be able to click on it and pull it back up. So if you know anyone that's missed this, they'll be able to rewatch this. I'll do the editing. Give me a couple days to put it all together. My contact information will be there as well. So let's talk about electronic voting technology. This is a diagram from one of our common election systems. Look how complicated this thing is. Does everyone understand how this works? It's incredibly complicated. We're just supposed to be counting dots on a piece of paper. This is a whole lot of extra BS for just counting dots on a piece of paper. It's absurd, actually. And this doesn't even include the voter registration system. This is just the tabulation component. Okay, so I've heard that people have a solution for this. And as a tech guy, I thought I could come up with a solution. I can create a safe voting system. That's no big deal. I'll create one that's much more secure than what we've got currently. So blockchain. Now, a lot of people think blockchain are the solution because people hear blockchain. They think, oh, blockchain's great. Does anyone know how blockchain actually works? Well, most people don't have a clue how it works. And that's kind of dangerous, right? Because you don't know how this works either, right? So if you don't know how that works, well, I'll show you some blockchain. Here's blockchain code. So let's go over some blockchain code. So this first procedure at the very top is defining as it's an enumeration of some items that's going to store some data. And that enumeration, buried development there is indicating that they're going to store some data types under those names: deployment, heighting B and CLTV, DERSIG, CSV, and SegWit. And that's going to be a 16-bit integer for each of those. Then we've got a procedure here called valid deployment, and it's going to return a Boolean value. Are you following? No? Well, you don't understand this system either? I don't think we can use blockchain either, because if the citizens cannot understand the system, how will they ever be able to detect if someone hid something in this code? That's the problem. Do you know Bitcoin alone runs on 200,000 lines of code? Blockchain? How on earth is any citizen going to look at that, even if it is open source? How does a normal citizen expect to check all that source code, to understand what they're looking at, to make sure the dots on the paper are counted properly and added up properly. Do we need technology? Do we need 200,000 lines of code to count dots on a piece of paper? No, we do not. In fact, we are going to be disenfranchising American citizens if we expect them to learn programming in order to verify if their elections are actually fair. That is horse SHIT. So we're going to say no to blockchain. I just want to put that to bed. And anyone that says blockchain is going to be used to run your elections, you tell them under no circumstances is that going to be used. Now, I don't have a problem with using blockchain and other technology as additional levels of verification for an election system, but we cannot base our election system. The foundation of our elections cannot be reliant on technology that people do not understand, or we're going to be exactly in the same boat we are at now or worse. So the solution is this. It's a common sense solution. We're going to return elections to the people, and we're going to return elections to the people in a very simple system. We need to have voter registration in person. We need to stop this whole virtual voter registration crap. We need to have paper voter registration cards. We need to have a citizenship check and a residency check right then when they're registering to vote. We need to make sure they're not registered in other places. We're going to check that as well. I've got a very simple method, a paper-based system with a technology component to it that allows sharing of the data that's on the paper, but the paper's the key. The paper's the primary. If someone hacks into the electronic, it doesn't matter because the paper is what we always go back to. And if it's a paper-based system in the county building, you take this massive attack surface that you once had and you reduce it down to just this tiny thing in the county building. You don't have to worry about things being connected to the internet and all that, CIS crap and CISA, Albert sensors and all that garbage. You don't have to worry about it. If you just move it back to paper, we take all that off the plate. And we know nothing electronic can be secured. Not one system that's electronic can be fully secured. So if we know that, let's stop being stupid. Let's just move it back to paper, use technology to provide additional levels of verification and transparency. At least we have a system that we can control that way. We need to have a witness signature on our voter registration, a witness signature right there at the county. And I think we should have our county officials notaries. I think every voter registration should be notarized because every voter registration is incredibly important, just like a legal document that needs to be notarized, just like a contract that would need to be notarized. We need to have the same level of importance and security applied to our voter registration. So we need to then publish the read-only list to everyone of what's on the paper. And yeah, I'm glad that I saw your comment there, Dan. I'm glad that people are starting to pick this up. And what you all need to do, the call to action here, among some other things I'll show you, is make sure we push this into the hands of everyone. I need this solution, the understanding of this. I need this concept to be spread all over the entire country. So all these people that are starting to write legislation, I want to make sure they write and pass the right legislation, not miss something that's important. And if I'm missing something that's important, please come to me. I'm open ears. I want to make this thing the best thing possible. So then as far as the poll books go, the poll books have to be on paper. No more electronic poll books. Paper poll books prepared from the voter registration cards. Those voter registration cards need to go to the precincts and they need to be checked right there on paper. Very simple. And a real signature right there, not a signature on this digital thing. I'm talking about a signature in the paper poll book from the voter. Return it to paper and we make the entire abuse surface much, much smaller. Mail-in voting. We do have some people that need to be able to vote absentee, but we can't open that up to everyone because it creates a massive hole of abuse in our elections. And if it creates a hole of abuse, we can't just open that hole up to everyone. Let's keep the hole as small as possible. So only need-based with supporting documentations. We need to vet the mail-out ballots going out. We need to vet them coming in with extreme scrutiny, not just this BS signature verification system. We should have a required notarized signature on every absentee ballot. People in France do that. I was just talking to a student that I was talking about elections, and he looked at our system and said, he looked at mail-in ballots because he, was going to school here, and he saw this, and he's like, "Well, when do you get them notarized?" And I said, "What do you mean notarized?" He's, "Well, when do you get we have to notarize our stuff before we can send it in and vote absentee." So when he found out we're not even doing that, France has figured this out. We don't have it figured out. We are way behind the times here. And that's embarrassing. America, come on, get with it. So we have to receive all mail-in ballots, all absentee ballots before polls close. As simple as that. We'll send them out earlier. That's fine. But when they come back, we do not accept another ballot in the mail or absentee at the poll close time. That's it. It's over. None of this week after or 2 week after BS. That's how they're manipulating it. Now, the powers that be that like to manipulate elections are not going to like this. In fact, they're probably going to try to kill me again. Someone tried to kill me last night already, trying to run me off the road. But I'll get into that story later. On election day, one day, holiday, at the precinct, 1,500 or less people. There's a reason why 1,500, because 1,500 people, 1,500 voters maximum at a precinct is a reasonable amount of ballots to tabulate by hand in a reasonable period of time. People that are trying to go larger than 1,500, they're going to end up causing delays and problems because people get tired after a while as well. And your counting team is a separate team. You have your people that run the election during the day, then you have your counting team come in right when the polls close and they do all the counting. I've done plenty of real hand counts. I'll help you. It's very simple to count dots on a piece of paper and add them up. And there's some very simple methods that make it really efficient and very fast and error-free. Then we have the paper poll book with the signatures. We don't accept any ballots after the polls close. And we shouldn't tabulate a single thing until the polls close. We do not start counting ballots, tabulating ballots until the polls close. We have to lock that down. And then on election night, we count the votes where they're cast. We remove all time and space between these. We don't count them the next day. We don't move them to another room, another building, another city. We count the votes right there in that same room under the same cameras that have been in that room the whole day. And we take those, we batch them into 25. We put them right through a dumb scanner that makes a PDF image, front and back, high resolution color of the ballots. And they get moved right there a few inches on the same table where the scanner is. And they get tabulated by hand under another camera that's right above looking straight down. And we take all those ballot images, all those PDFs, and all the video of the entire process. And we put that out on the county websites. We just make the entire thing totally transparent. All the tally sheets, all the scratch sheets, everything gets scanned. Their signatures, everyone takes accountability for who's there. Everyone puts their name on everything that they do because everyone's there to do a good job. I mean, you should be able to have a criminal count ballots and not be able to make a mistake because there's so many eyes on them. You got to have Democrats and Republicans, side by side doing the work in tandem, 2 callers, 2 talliers, a witness, all that infrastructure. The scanners, the cameras, everything's really cheap now. Why don't we use technology for good rather than to obfuscate the system? Let's use technology to create transparency, not obfuscation. Very simple. We scan everything to the PDFs. We put everything out on the county website. We keep everything very discreet, precinct-based results. We take the precinct totals and we put those on the precinct building so people don't have to just blindly believe what's on the website. They bring their phone down to the precinct building, pull up what was on the website, and hold it right up to the paper, right on the side, and say, okay, let me make sure. Yep, that's right. Yep, that number's right. That number's right. If they have any questions, they probably know the people that sign their name because those people actually worked in the precinct and they live in the precinct. So it's really easy for them to check with those judges. And in fact, all the judges should keep copies too, because they are the custodians of that information as well, including right on the building. And we put everything out. How about our election officials? We, instead of being in the position to try to keep the citizens away from our elections, which a lot of them are being put in those positions by the county attorneys and by the voting system vendors and by the law, all the stupid laws that are in place. But why don't we turn our election officials into election transparency agents? So all our county election officials have to do is show the videos and teach the citizens how to conduct the elections. Let the citizens go out and do all the work in the precincts, add up all the totals, take the ballot images, do everything under camera, bring back all the SD cards of the video, bring back the USB sticks with all the ballot images, the PDFs on them. They're taken right there under camera. You have so many extra levels of verification that it makes it impossible for someone to manipulate this system when you have triple verification like this. And they hand that to the county officials, and the county officials, their job is just to put everything out there for everyone to see. That's how we fix this problem. Take the secret out of elections and just make the whole freaking thing transparent. the voted list, the poll books, everything. Give it all to the citizens. So if anyone doubted the results of an election, it's really simple. Just go to the county website and pull it up. It's that easy. And then here's what we do. And this is the icing on the cake. After every election, in every precinct, our kids from 6th through 12th grade take a break in their normal schooling. They get a refresher in the morning about what the United States of America is, what freedom is, what elections are, and how elections work, and why elections are important. And then they break up after lunch into groups, and they go to the county website. They download all the ballots from their precinct. They pull up the video, and our children recount the election in that 4-hour time period, which of course they're going to do it way faster than their parents did the night before. And they're going to recount that election from the ballot images right there. So our kids, the day after the election, are going to audit our election. And we're going to do it 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grades. Massive amounts of free audits for our elections. Our kids get a huge appreciation for the entire process. They get taught how to do it. And if our kids do that and they find a mistake, which I doubt they will, because the system is set up in a way that's really hard to make a mistake. But let's say our kids did find a mistake. Can you imagine this? They go to the website, the county website, and they submit, hey, in Mrs. Beaton's class, we found a problem on, table 4 at 515, batch number 42, and ballot number whatever. And the county officials look at that. They pull up the video, they pull up the images, and they look and they say, oh my gosh, you're right. You did find a mistake. Then they can come into the county and they throw the kids a big pizza party, and they bring the news station and they do a nice story about the kids that found the mistake. Can you imagine we could have this and make our kids feel good about doing something that supports their freedoms? And then after they graduate high school in 12th grade, how old are they? Voting age. Right? So darn right, they're going to go register to vote. Darn right, they're going to vote. And then all these excuses we hear, how are we going to find someone to run the elections? Who's going to count the ballots? Well, if our kids do it for all these years, if our kids have done it for 6 years, they are going to be, they're going to be so excited to actually count a real election. And they're going to be like, Mom, Dad, get aside. We know how to do this much faster and better. You guys have been doing this too slow for too long. So our kids are going to just kill it. And we are going to have a constant supply of kids because every year a new graduating class. So we're going to have a constant supply of people to count our ballots. And since they're doing it by camera and scan ballot images, and of course adults can be there too. Let's do, kids and adults. Everyone should be doing it. We all get to do it as one great big happy American family. And that's how we ensure this for generations. That's how we fix this system, not temporarily for 4 years. That's how we ensure this for multiple generations going forward. We save this country for all our future generations. So I put this whole thing together, and it's called the PEP. It's basedelections.org/PEP. My head is behind it. I'll try to move it a little here. I don't know if I can move, and my camera's moving. Sorry. So anyway, basedelections.org/PEP. That's how we fix it. Share that website everywhere. Pull it up. If I'm missing something, I want to know. You tell me what I'm missing. And here's how you get to it. If you go to Hand Count Roadshow, it's another way to get to it. Then go to handcountroadshow.org, click on the big red button, click for election solution. That will take you right to the PEP platform. And here it is. I give you a nice scope of exactly why we need to make our transparent elections a thing again, and why they have to be simple for every single American citizen to understand in order for us to provide equal access to be able to verify our elections as well. I go through all those components again. I've even updated a little bit with a few things that some citizens have brought to me that I thought were a great idea. So look over that, contact me, please, if you have any questions or suggestions. And let's see, what else do we have here? So Hand Count Roadshow, if you don't know what that is, I'm traveling the country. I just got back from a 19-month travel around the country, trying to help people understand why not to vote early and all the things we need to do in order to protect our election as much as possible, because it was so important for us to get a win in this last election. We got a win, a little win, a good win. I'm not upset. I wish it was a better win, but I'm not upset. And I'm going to get on the road again because I know how important it is to get the PEP platform front and center and get all these counties from bottom up to implement this, to take back control of our elections, put elections back into the hands of the people. It's so critical. So I'm jumping back on the road in about May 31st. I'm going to hit the road. And if you go to handcountroadshow.org and you scroll down, you can see all of my previous stops and the podcasts I've been on, the interviews I've done. I'm just putting everything out there in the open because, I'm a transparency person, right? So I want everyone to know how hard I'm working for this country. And I'm going to not stop. 2 years now. I'm going to go hit this hard because we have to fix this. If we don't fix this, our little window of opportunity is going to be gone. God gave us this opportunity. We must not let it go to waste. We have to make it happen right now. So let me admit Cheryl on here. Okay, so we're going to do this right now together. So I'm going to start May 31st. I'm going to hit the road from Denver. I'm leaving, and that's the route I'm going to take. And I'm going to end up down almost by Texas in December of 2025 in Oklahoma. That's my route across that time period. So if you know anyone along there or you're along that route, I want you to go to handcountroadshow.org, go to take action, and then down to where it says request a visit. I need you to request a visit. I want to get as many people on the route as possible. And I found a wonderful patriot that said she's going to make a bunch of phone calls for me. So if you request a visit, she's going to be calling you soon to get you on the route and get you set up. Here's my next year after that, starting in November or December 25. I'm going to get the road again and hit the East Coast. So that's my route that I'm going to take. And I'll end up November 26th back in Colorado, and hopefully the Coloradans can get their state fixed up because we have an incredible amount of corruption here. So the political manipulation I'll get into when I come and visit everyone. Obviously, in this time period, it's a lot of content, so I don't have time to go into everything. But I hope I did a great job of explaining the technological manipulation and what we need to do. So here's the call to action here. You got to learn the election ecosystem, which I have got over here. If anyone wants to watch. If you look at that button right there, take me to the most recent recording and slide deck. That'll take you to my presentation, the most recent one. And then we're going to learn 5th generation warfare. If you have not read these books, you need to read these books. Get these books written by General Flynn and Boone Cutler. Very, very important. Start with session 1, then read session 2, then go to session 3. Then I'm going to teach enemy tactics. So you know what the tactics of the enemy are so we can combat them. And operational security, very important for people to know. And we need to act. We're going to map people out. We're going to map out the organizations. We're going to map out the laws that are inhibiting our success. We're going to expose the enemy. We're going to educate the public. And we're going to replace the bad actors. And we're going to replace the bad actors with good American patriots. So I need leaders, soldiers, and donors. I need skill sets. I need researchers. I need people good at sending in public information requests. I need legal support, phone calls, fundraising, meeting organizers, flyers, signs, sending emails, and social media posting. We need all that. And I'm going to help you do that. So right now, you go to handcountroadshow.org. You're going to click take action. You're going to sign up for a visit. And when you get home, you're going to build a local citizen network. You're going to remote. We're going to do a pre-visit session, remote. I'm going to come in remotely with you and help you guys. And then you're going to set the stage for me to come in there. So I do need some help. So if anyone can help me out, I'm doing this all out of my pocket. No one funds me. Nothing funds me. No organization. I'm doing this for the people and with the help of only the people. And I'm about halfway through my savings account. And I'd like to survive another 2 years. So that donate button in the upper right, I would really appreciate anyone that can help me keep going. Monthly donations are great, $5, $10, whatever you got. I really appreciate it. And that's the end of my presentation. So I'll go back to my contact information just to make sure everyone's got it if they want it. And then I'll open this up to questions. But I did want to hit the time for Tina's show. So thank you all for joining me.
Hi, I'm Joe, Supreme Leader of DCF Guns. What is DCF Guns, you ask? We're the best damn gun store and range in the universe. Do we have guns? We have all the guns. We got small guns. We got big guns. We even have beastly guns. We offer all types of training, and we have 5 ranges across our 3 locations. I'm a good shot. And of course, we have all types of ammo. We even have flamethrowers. Woo! We offer incredible membership opportunities, and members save even more on guns, ammo, and accessories. Military, both active and retired, and first responders get up to 40% off memberships. Come join the DCF family today, where we keep the range hot and the deals hotter. hot. In every thread, in every stitch, Honorbound USA weaves the fabric of the American spirit. It's not just apparel, it's a testament to God, family, and country. At Honorbound USA, we're a family of patriots who put our faith, family, and America first. When you visit our website, you'll find a line of products that embody our commitment to pray, stand, speak, and act. As the official site for the Untamed podcast, all of our products proclaim speaking the truth with courage. We also have the powerful documentary from Professor David Clements, Let My People Go. Identify yourself as one of the few who are willing to stand for what they believe in. Join the Honorbound USA family today. Wear it as a badge of honor, commitment to the values that shape us, and a pledge to the bright future we will build together. Because when you're honor-bound, you're not just wearing a brand, you're embodying a lifestyle. Do you want to get profits from the world's most productive oil basin? Bloomberg calls the Permian Basin the world's most important growth engine for oil production. Now there's a way for everyday investors to collect monthly checks from an incredible oil hotspot. It's not a stock, and it's not an ETF. Instead, you can actually own royalty rights on over 380,000 acres of prime oil and gas fields. The best part? 95% of all income from this investment gets paid directly to investors like you. You can simply sit back and collect the royalty checks month after month. You can get started with just $25 through any brokerage account. Visit oilboom2025.com to learn more about the opportunity from the Oxford Club's chief income strategist, Mark Lichtenfeld. That's oilboom2025.com to learn how to start collecting Permian Basin oil royalties.